Ursa by Novembre, and 9 years have come and gone ever since the last time we heard any new material from this group, so it's been a long time coming. We've spoken on this channel seemingly every single year about a band or two or three that rises from the ashes and releases something brand new. A couple of years ago, our monumental, the big one was Carcass, and now really 9 years seems to pale in comparison to what it was for Carcass, but it's still a monumental return. Gothic metal intermixed with some progressive metal, intermixed with a little bit of folk metal, what some of the band members may even call a little bit of medieval work, and it's mainly in just some of the chords that are used and some of their own description. But here's the big thing, 9 years. And really, if you want to talk even larger amounts of time, roughly about 20 to 22 years since they worked with a very, very particular gentleman, someone who is a legend in the heavy metal field, and that is Dan Swano. And he did work on this album for mixing and mastering and does a fantastic job, but does the band actually pull off what they need to pull off with the material? Do they make the 9-year wait truly one that's worth it? Let's take a look. 10 tracks, 65 minutes worth of new material. You'll take a look at this and notice that there's a real average time that's right around the 5.5 to close to 6 minute mark. There's no song that really teeters underneath that 5 minute mark, so each song is going to have a particular build to it. Each song is going to have its own character, and that's very true. This band teeters between just soft, beautiful, beautiful music that has just sort of these swirling soundscapes that are behind it that just sort of they sort of cascade like waves over your ears whenever you are listening to them. The soft vocals that you oftentimes get from Novembre also sort of emanate that same relaxed feeling, although it borders a little bit more on a bit romantic or a bit philosophical. Think about what would happen if Agalloch was not Agalloch. As silly as that sounds. Agalloch is not Agalloch, and you're not making songs that are 15 minutes long, that have that hardened exterior. This is instead something that embraces that softness and embraces that free flow, but then every so often just enjoys getting heavy, just enjoys getting ridiculous. That throws in a couple of growls or screams, that throw in a couple of tricks along the way. Imagine Agalloch that has this beautiful identity crisis, and you have essentially what Novembre is able to boast for a lot of people, and Ursa is an album that's able to describe that perfectly to the T. You take a look and then take a listen to the very first few songs on this disc, to Australis, to The Rose, to Umanai, and you really understand how that has sort of come to surface over 9 years. With albums of theirs such as Materia in the middle portion of the 2000s, you saw a lot more of that soft angle, that harshness was not one that really earthed itself as much, so that gothic, progressive exterior really shone to the world. And you get that with these opening numbers. You get some of those ideas, but that heaviness that emanated on some of their earliest releases from the 1990s, and once again did make some appearances on their last album, The Blue, from 2007, start to really push themselves up to the surface. I don't want to give away too much of this release, because it's really one that needs to be beheld. It's one that needs to be heard. It's one that needs to be sort of dissected on its own. But I will say that Ursa, the title track, you might say, Ursa, man, that sounds really familiar. Of course, it's Russian for bear, but also with this, it's actually a reference somewhat to Animal Farm, and it's a very dense and very beautiful track, but it's also one that showcases some of the internal chaos that this band's able to really describe and showcase. It's got a very heavy opening to it that really starts off this song with a certain unknown philosophy, and it's very cool to hear what it morphs into. It's very cool to hear this band have these sort of rougher-edged moments, these, real kind of heavy moments, and then it somehow, some way, always seems to sort of break down into that softness, and that softness tends to be the place where Novembre really shines amazingly. But more often than not, whenever they sort of pinpoint that heavy sound, is whenever that build happens. the mix and the master of this gets very, very dense. It's sort of perfectly representing kind of the madness and some of the real character that this album is able to boast. I really have a big-time love affair as not only a reviewer, but as a fan of this band with Oceans of Afternoons. I love the way that this song just sort of, it doesn't catapult itself into its main idea. It instead opts to just take its time and really get its point across. It's one of those tracks that I would consider like a slow burn, where instead of forcing itself along its road, it just lets the road take it where it needs to go. And it's just got this beautiful, beautiful riff pattern to it. The construction is extremely well done, very well thought out. And Dan Swano once again does a phenomenal job doing the mixing and the mastering of this song. It just gives it this charm that feels very individual, but not as individual as Agathe. And this is track 8 on the disc. It is 9.5 minutes, and it boasts so many different styles of music. It almost feels like multiple frameworks, or as though this band was auditioning to perhaps create 3 or 4 more, because they were able to somehow intermix and interweave like 3 or 4 different musical styles into the song, including some folk, including a little bit of perhaps some black metal riffing, or maybe even some death metal riffing, but then also maintaining that soft charm, that gothic / progressive side of this group that they're really known for. And this is largely instrumental. The longest track on the album, probably the longest song that Novembre have done ever since, say, the first portion of the 2000s. I think they did a track that was 12 minutes. This is over 9 minutes, close to 9.5. And it's largely instrumental, and it's sort of like this broken framework that somehow feels like it's put together with hot glue, but it works so fucking well. It works completely. Wow, I mean, it's not something that you would expect. It comes out of left field, and it takes you on this journey, and by the time you're done, you're changed. And this is actually a track that the band themselves has stated has been sort of, around for about 20 years. So this is a song that nearly spans the same age as the band itself, so you could almost see and witness a little bit of the history of the group in this one track. 20 years spanned over the course of a little less than 10 minutes, which is quite incredible. And then with Brennan, you almost see this like Iron Maiden introduction that then launches into somewhat deathy, death metal, sure. And then Finn. Obviously, we know what Finn is. End. And it's a beautiful finale. 7 minutes of beauty and bliss, kind of reinforcing some of the ideas that this band has to offer. It wouldn't make any sense to have the 9.5 minute track be the finale, even though it's the most different, and typically you want your final track to really stand out, but for the sake of coherence and for the sake of this album, Finn is beautiful. And obviously its title is quite ironically fitting. So what about this disc? What do we have to say about this overall? What is the skinny on Ursa to be a little bit, whatever about it? For a 9-year wait, this is an album that is a welcome surprise, because I wasn't aware of its eventual release until just a few months back. But it's also one that delivers, and I think that this is due in part to great songwriting that interwove with maybe 9 years of hunger and 9 years of wanting to get back into the studio and getting something out and just playing and writing music once again. And I feel that they drew plenty of great inspiration from not only their older material, things that perhaps they had been developing for a while, and also just brand new spot-on ideas. They gave things the opportunity, they gave tracks and ideas the opportunity to grow, and I think that did this album many, many favors in the way in which it feels and flows, the way in which it developed, and how mature some of this riffing sounds. At times this album could seem like it's a band with many hats and many faces. But they're a veteran band, Novembre is, and so based off of that, and based off of the very cautious hand and ideas of Dan Swano, they handle this like pros, because that's what they are. 88 out of 100, a beautiful, beautiful, moving experience that I recommend to just about anybody, not just members of the prog universe. This is one that I think just about any metal fan will find something that they appreciate on it. These guys are Italian, so you know that there's going to be some moments where it feels very, very much sort of over the top, but that's one of its charms. That's one of the real beautiful pieces of this. I'm going to actually link in the description box below a really, really cool article where they sort of describe this album a little bit better track by track, and you can also listen along with the stream that they have and really check out this band and see if they're for you. But if you liked what I had to say and you liked what you heard whenever you scope out this article, then do go and find this record and give it a purchase. This is one that's worth it. It absolutely is. What do you guys think about this album? What do you think about Ursa? Whether it's something that you heard before this review or something that you had to go and listen and come back, let me know what you think about it. I'm really interested in what people's opinions are in this band. I think they're really, really underrated and deserve a lot more attention. Let me know in the comments below. I am Cover Killer Nation, and I will talk to each and every one of you guys later. Peace.